Yo, how's it going, everybody? It's the Masked Man, and before we get into today's video, I just want to take the time again to thank you all so much for being really close to 80,000 subscribers. I'm trying my best to hit 100,000 before the year ends, and I think that's really achievable. Again, thank you all so much, and if you are new to this channel, consider liking, commenting, and subscribing, and turn on the bell notifications, that way you never miss an upload. And without further ado, cue the intro. Seven Deadly Sins, Nanatsu no Taizai, one of the animes that I got into in the year 2018, around the same time I was watching Soul Eater series The Jaeger and Magi. And actually the way I got into Seven Deadly Sins was after finishing Soul Eater and feeling extremely disappointed. It said, because you watched Soul Eater, bam, recommended Seven Deadly Sins. And so I began to watch the series. Now 2 years have passed and I read the manga, caught up, whatnot, and I'll probably just title this video looking back at Seven Deadly Sins because looking at it now, it's kind of crazy to remember all of the hype and talk and just the amount of things that I saw about Seven Deadly Sins. For instance, one of the other ways that I was presented to the series actually before even watching the anime was through the AMVs that everyone would always do to an XXXTentacion song. And just overall at that time when the series was, I think, at its first or second season, there was a good amount of hype surrounding it. It was all good. Things were looking great. Now, mind you, I had not read the manga up to that point, and I was waiting just like everybody else for season 3. And then season 3 happened. I don't think I've ever seen a series go from loved to absolutely trashed on so quickly. I mean, the only other thing I've seen that happen to was like the Tokyo Ghoul anime. But from what I've heard, at least Tokyo Ghoul has a solid enough manga to carry its weight. Seven Deadly Sins, on the other hand, not so much. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't dislike the series, and for me, it still has replay value as I've kind of been watching it recently when I'm not watching Gintama. But Seven Deadly Sins overall had some major flaws that at the moment of watching the first 2 seasons stood out to me, but I never really dwelled on them till actually starting a channel and expanding my reach more and actually kind of critiquing and talking about animes and mangas as well for a living. Back then when I was watching the series, I was just so captivated by the characters and some of the hype moments that I never really sat down to analyze what was actually going on. This was pretty much the Masked Man before he had ever even heard of Berserk. That just, ew, it just don't sound right. That's like saying Vegeta before he had a Saiyan pride. It doesn't sound like it can exist. Anyways, I digress. I think Seven Deadly Sins deserves some points right off the bat aesthetic-wise for having a really unique sense of character design and the way that it portrays its characters. Honestly, the art style of Seven Deadly Sins kind of reminds me of how things are with Demon Slayer and JoJo's. Like, once you see the way the character's drawn, you automatically know what series they're from. Now, of course, this can apply to many other series such as One Piece, Fairy Tail, etc, 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 but I always felt like Seven Deadly Sins had a distinct touch to the way it drew its characters. And really, I just wanted to throw that out there to kind of segue into the first point, and that's Seven Deadly Sins' characters. That's what drives the series. And looking back on it now, I think that's kind of what my overall criticism as well as praise on the series is going to be, and let me explain. The characters are great. For instance, my favorite in the series is Bon. I'd have to say my second favorite is King. Of course, you have Meliodas and Escanor, although for me, Escanor, I've always called him the giant Pringles man, and for some reason, I just don't like anime characters with mustaches. I just don't know what it is, okay? I'm sorry, you can hate on me, dislike, unsub, whatever. Merlin is also really cool, but I'm pretty sure the majority of the reason why people like her is for completely different reasons, and I couldn't stand Gowther for how annoying he came off, especially when he intervened and kind of ruined what Diane and King had going on at the moment, but now it's all okay, so it doesn't matter to me. Each of the Seven Deadly Sins are stand out in their own way, and each person can have their favorite. My favorite, of course, just being Bond, period. I think he's the best out of the group. And Meliodas as a protagonist, I think he's interesting, but some of the flaws that I would argue are with Meliodas kind of show throughout the rest of the series. Now, again, I like Meliodas as a character, but now I might as well get onto the first criticism. And that's the overall plot and story of Seven Deadly Sins. The characters are solid, right? And I've noticed Gantz, which I've been reading currently, or Gantz, however you want to pronounce it, has a very similar issue of having very, very solid characters, but the actual foundation for which those characters stand on is a little bit shaky. Seven Deadly Sins, when it first started, caught me and hooked me with that premise. It was amazing. I love the idea of them getting framed for something that wasn't their fault, but anybody else remember how in the first season, the person that, like, they were framed for killing came back out of nowhere? And that's truly what I'm trying to get at. I felt as if Seven Deadly Sins, throughout its time trying to expand its backstory, world, and lore, if you will, did a poor job of doing so Hence, a lot of the decisions that were made felt a little bit random and just out of nowhere with any real thought previously that would connect it. I kind of felt like the series over time just got worse as things progressed. There didn't really seem to be a theme throughout all the series constantly to which all the characters could work with. It just felt like, well, here are the characters, this is what the character is about, this is where they live, bada bing, bada boom, let's move on from here. And I think part of that might also be in the antagonists. As I've stated in other videos when I criticize certain series, is I think that they're held back by the lack of a truly great antagonist. Because as I stated in my video how to write the perfect antagonist, the antagonist needs to create conflict with the protagonist by having their own goal. And without that sense of natural conflict, the story and the actual narrative of what's going on can feel a little bit wonky. Which is what I felt really happened in 7 Deadly Sins. I don't think there was proper build-up to the biggest antagonist within the series, and the Ten Commandments as a villain group, they were cool, yeah, they were alright, there were a few members here and there that I really liked, but they didn't truly serve their purpose to the max, and in the end that ends up hurting our protagonist. The series is fun to watch, the character interactions are great, just like as I said when I talked about Demon Slayer, like when I talked about Naruto. It's fun to see the characters on screen, and it's very enjoyable, but I can't be the only one who kind of noticed 7 Deadly Sins was a little bit lacking in some of the common sense areas when it came to the direction the story was taking. And I think a lot of this was fixable by having some of the major characters within the lore in the world of 7 Deadly Sins be set from the beginning. You see, you had the whole things with the King Demon and then the angels, but we didn't really find out about that till way later. At first, we were just introduced with the 7 Deadly Sins who were framed for killing somebody, and now they're wanted in bounties, which is fine, but then when all of these, like, expansions start happening, if you don't clarify it to the audience, or at least give some sort of build-up to those moments seem cool for a little bit, but over time, they just feel meh, and they really fizzle out. One of the other things 7 Deadly Sins kind of dropped the ball with that I wish they took, and it was what partially captivated at the beginning, was the romantic narratives within some of the characters. You had Bon and Elaine, and personally, I always thought that it was kind of sweet, although now looking back on it, I'm like, bro, Jericho all the way. And then you had Diane and King, which I think now is probably my favorite relationship in the entire series. Meliodas and Elizabeth was a tragic tale and quite also a romantic one, although partially, and this is gonna sound nitpicky at this point, I didn't like it that much, mainly because Elizabeth's voice is super infuriating. I mean, beyond annoying. Merlin and Escanor also kind of had their thing going, and I just kind of felt bad for my boy Escanor, not gonna lie. But beyond those moments just being kind of cute and sweet, there wasn't much substance behind it, again, with the exception, I would argue, with Meliodas and Elizabeth. Also Bon, I guess, because that was probably a major influence in what changed his character. Overall, I thought 7 Deadly Sins was alright, but by the criticisms that I mentioned, it was lacking in certain things that could have truly taken it to that next level. And I think 7 Deadly Sins would have overall benefited if it stayed with the similar vibe it had near the beginning. It felt much like a series that had a lot of lore behind it, kind of like me currently when I'm playing a Dark Souls game. I'm trying to find out and figure out what's the story of these characters. That might be a little tricky to pull off with an anime and manga, mind you, but nonetheless, I think it would have actually benefited the series compared to what they tried to do when they expanded, and it ended up just getting worse as it went along. But you know, that's just kind of my take from the series looking back on it. Now, if you happen to disagree, again, you can always let me know by commenting. And if you are new to the channel, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell notifications. As always, this has been The Masked Man. Hope everyone has a blessed rest of the day, and peace.